Hello and welcome back to another daily cribbage. We're ready to play and learn from player 135. See what we can do. Well, we got a nice easy 2-3-10-10, which allows us to throw away 6-9, so we'll do that. We get to think about how we want to play this out. Especially against a 4 lead, there's a lot of options here. We could play a 2 or a 10. Just going to keep it simple with a 10. If our opponent goes to 18, we'll go up to 28. And the point is that we can play our 3. We'll play our 3 now because our opponent doesn't have any. And we get a run of 3, so that's pretty nice at the end. Why doesn't our opponent have a 3, even though they've shown us double 4-2? It's because they would have played the 3 at the end to get 31. So that is the safer play. Alright, next up we've got a low, mid or high hand. So we could throw away, when you're throwing away into your opponent's crib, it's often safest to throw away mid-high. So I'm going to go 7 queen here. And we'll start by leading, let's say, one of our low cards. It keeps us another low card for later. And our middle and high cards are here to help us jump if we need it. So see what our opponent does. Okay. Come up to 12. I don't want to play the 10 right now, so I'm just going to play out this ace. I've sort of given away to our opponent that we don't have a 3 there, because we would have played it. I'll just pair this. Opponent does have more 6s and 5s, but they have the 2, 4, 6, 9, all in clubs actually, so that looks very nice. It's going to take them up to hopefully not too much more than us. Okay, well, we do get 21 apiece after a couple rounds. The computer didn't like our discard too much. It probably liked one of the other mid or high discards. They're a little bit safer. This one's a 5 with lots of 10 hands, and we get a 9 on top, so we love that. And we'll play out one of our jacks. We fully expect a 2 here. We have to either play our 5 or 10. I think I'm going to go 5 here. And the point is the opponent probably doesn't play a 5 because probably worried about getting tripled. We got the bad end of that. Opponent had lots of low cards left, so we ended up giving away a lot of points on the play. Maybe that's worth coming back to later. Maybe there's something to improve there. Alright. Oh, no. We see a flush. We also see 6 points. So 6 points with the flush or 6 points with the ace 4 double 10. I think I like the ace 4 double 10 because 3 jack is maybe a bit safer, and we hit a ace on top, so we got 12 points in hand, which is pretty good. It's going to take us up to our milestone. And we'll take this 15. Opponent does have some aces sometimes, but no, they're just going queen, queen, no 5, and maybe they've got jack, king, something like that. Let's see, we see the king and the jack, okay, and it's the right jack as well, so they've got 9 points. Taking them up to 51, and 4 points in the crib with the 3-3-6. Computer likes the flush. I guess it does have ace 4 in it, so it improves quite well. This one, the flush is amazing, so we'll keep that. And we're hoping that our opponent doesn't get enough points to get to the next milestone. Opponent showing us as 10 there, so there's a chance that they're going to play out a jack. I'm playing out the jack here because I expect my opponent has 5s, and if I play 8, 7 instead, then my opponent gets a go, and I want to get 2 goes. I want to get a go that round, and I'll get a go next round by not letting my opponent play. Okay, so we're at the milestone 77. Opponent is struggling a little bit, and here we've got some options. I'm just going to play the 4. And the idea is that if our opponent doubles us, we get to, and here we also play the 10. We don't play the ace because we have some good possibilities to get lots of points from having a pair of aces left. I can go through some sample lines, but mostly they involve if our opponent goes 5 and then we get to play out both of our aces, making 31 with the pair. Okay. All right, what's next? We're at 87. We are looking to get to 96. It's our crib. Opponent is quite a long ways off. 8-9 seems really nice. And we face a 3. We could get fancy here and play out a 5, but I'm just going to go 6 because we have a 6, so opponent has fewer 6s until they play one of their 6s. Okay. 3, 5, 6. I expect lots of 4s and 7s, so I'm going to play a 5. And the queen is actually, it looks like we're giving up some points there, but our opponent would have scored a lot more if they had had a 4. So we're just taking away some points from the 4s and giving it to that particular hand, or those particular hands that have a 10. Okay. We see 3, 3, 9, 9. It's very nice. Sometimes you want to keep the 4 because 3, 3, 4 does combo pretty well. And there's another 3 on top, so... okay, and then we play out all the 3s. Okay, really good. Yeah, triple 3 is 6, and then we've got more 6 points from our 9s, and then we've got a pair of 9s for 20 points. So we'll say good game to our opponent. That was... well, they're already out of here. But yeah, I think there was an earlier hand that I want to go back to, which was the low, middle, high hand, where we have lots of options of what we want to discard. But and let's see if we can crack down on what the differences are between all of those discards. Okay, so this is our low, middle, high hand from the beginning of the game. We're at 16 points, our opponent's at 7, so our opponent's crib. So positionally, we are a couple of points behind our milestone, and when we look at our hand, we see 0 points, so we're not guaranteed to get to our milestone, but with a couple of low cards and some middle cards in hand, it seems very unlikely for us to really not hit our milestone. We're probably going to get a point on the play and another couple of points from the cut. So we're not too worried about making our milestone, but at the same time, we're going to probably only just make it, looking at our hand. And one of the things that we also want to do is to slow down our opponent as much as possible. We've got a hand that doesn't make many points. Let's try and be as safe as possible if we can. And if we can also try and keep some points at the same time, whatever that means for this hand, we should do that. Now, when it comes to low, mid, or high hands, my general advice is that if you're the dealer, then you usually want to start by thinking about what happens if you discard your middling cards. If your middling cards combo with your low cards, you might want to keep your low and middling cards and discard your high cards, but note that that usually compromises some of the points you're going to get in the crib. It's very rare that you want to keep your middle and high cards and discard your low cards, but it does sometimes happen. Now conversely, if you're pone and you're discarding to your opponent, then you really have to have a good balance of what you want to do. You want to minimize the points in your opponent's crib and maximize the points left in your hand. So for this particular hand, what are we looking at? Well, this 6-7, the 6-7 is connected, and that gives you some extra points, basically. Whenever we hit a 5 or an 8, it improves our hand a lot if we keep 6-7. We're really interested in hitting 8s because that's going to be 6, 7, 8 for 5 points. So that's a reason why 6-7 is going to be particularly good to keep in this hand. So when you're discarding as pone, then you usually have 3 options, either discarding a middle and a high card or just discarding your high cards. Usually you want to avoid discarding cards that are connected. So in this case, we'd want to avoid discarding 6, 7 because they're connected. And if we had something like 9, 10 in hand, so 9 I call a middling card and 10 I call a high card, it's, I think, a useful distinction. But you want to avoid discarding 9, 10 because they're connected and just gives your opponent extra points in the crib. So here there are 4 different discards that are a middle and a high card, 6, 10, 6, queen, 7, 10, 7, queen. And usually the safest ones are going to be your highest middling card and your highest 10. So things like 9 king, 8 king, in this case 7 queen, this is going to be, I think, the safest thing to discard. I think in some weird scenarios there might be some strange removal effects going on with your low cards and the middling cards that you have that probably mean that, you know, it might be slightly different. So it might turn out for some strange reason when we check with the computer that 6, 10 scores a bit better. But usually I go with this, the highest middling card and the highest 10 being the safest. Of course, if you do this too much, then it's possible to become exploitable, so you want to mix it up a little bit. So can't be too wrong to discard these other things. The other nice thing is that by discarding 7 queen, we're keeping a little bit more, we're not discarding something that's suited, but that's usually something you really don't care about too much at all. Okay. In this case as well, if we discard it, the other thing that we can think about discarding is our 2 high cards, so 10 queen. And this is an option here because the 10 and the queen aren't connected and the 6, 7 are connected. So we get to keep some connectivity in our hand and we are discarding something that's not connected. The connectivity in your hand is usually not as vital as connectivity of what you discard to the crib. It's not as many points because, for instance, if we had 10 jack in hand, by discarding 10 jack, we're giving away a lot more potential points. And I think that one thing that we should do is to compare. What would we do with this hand compared to if the queen was a jack, say, or if the 10 was a jack, something like that. We'll compare what the different decisions are going to be and how the expected values change. But I think we're going to find that in this case, 10 queen is actually probably the best discard, allowing us to keep our connected 6, 7, which improves on a lot of cards and can improve to quite a lot of points. One thing that's nice though about this hand, if we do keep one of the 10s, so in this case, as we did discarding 7 queen, is that we have opportunities to combo with our low cards than the 10. So if we cut a 2 or a 4, then we get some 15s with our 10, which is a lot harder to do if we discard both of our 10s. The only way to really make 15s are going to be with both of our middling cards or both of our middling cards and 2 low cards, maybe like ace, 6, 7 or 2, 6, 7 if we cut a 2. If we cut a 5, then we can make 3, 5, 7 if we cut an 8. But yeah, if we cut low cards, then the 10s are good to keep. If we cut middling cards, then the middling cards are good to keep. And that's usually how these things go. So on balance, I think 7 queen's a pretty fine discard. I think the computer hates it. So let's have a look what the computer thinks. And we'll start off by looking at this hand, and then we'll compare it if the queen was a jack. All right. So we're on Liam Brown's website, and we're having a look at the different discards. So 10 queen is definitely at the top. It apparently has hand minus crib average score of -1.82. So we're expecting the crib to score about 4.7 with our discard, and our hand is going to score about 2.9, which sounds about right because there are many cuts that give us a hand that scores 0 by keeping ace 3, 6, 7. If we have a look at the histogram, how does that 0 bar look? about 30% of the time that happens. About 23% of the time we're scoring 2, and at the very end, sometimes we score 7. That's going to be whenever we cut 8s and 5s, I think 8s and 5s. How much do 6s score us? Just 4 points. Yeah, 8s and 5s, that happens 17.4% of the time. So those are the scores that are possible for us just in our hand. But whereas when we throw away 10 queen, our opponent could get loads of stuff in the crib. They can even score 16 about 2% of the time, which is kind of scary. Mostly if they throw away jacks and maybe if they cut a 5, something like that. Anyway. So that's the best one. And now I'm going to eat some of my words or some of my advice. So in second place is ace queen. So I didn't mention this as a possibility. This is, I guess, a slightly more nuanced thing about discards. But aces are actually fairly safe things to discard because they don't form many runs. So you can get rid of them quite a lot of the time, especially with high tens. Queens and kings in particular. So in this case, ace queen has I think a pretty safe crib compared to, say, 10 queen. So in this case, we can see ace queen in the crib is an average of about 4.39. Our 10 queen is about 4.72. They might sound kind of similar, but if you have a look around, most of the numbers are in the 4.x region. So say 4.39, a lot lower than 4.72. If we want to be a little bit more, so what we said was we went for 7 queen, which is pretty good. It's pretty similar. So 4.38 in the crib. For some reason, 6 queen scores a little bit less than 7 queen in the crib. I can't think of why that is right off the top of my head. Maybe you have some ideas why that's true, but I think the difference is extremely minor there. So I think that's okay. Also, we'll notice that for both of these discards, 6 queen and 7 queen, the resulting hand scores us the same. And if you go through that logically, it's because every cut for one hand can be matched up with a cut for the other hand, 1-to-1, and so they'll have the same expected value. I think then that makes sense. But the expected value of throwing away ace queen is a little bit more. And why is that the case? Well, it follows from what we were saying. It allows us to, by throwing away ace queen, what you're doing is you're allowing yourself to keep the 6-7 connected in your hand. And by throwing away the ace, what you're saying is that ace doesn't really contribute much. The 3 contributes more to the cuts that are going to score you points. So, for instance, by keeping 6, 7, 10, 3, if we cut a 2, then that's great because we get the 2, 3, 10. If we cut a 3 or a 6, 7, or 10, that's great because of the pair. 4s, we kind of miss, but 5s, 8s, 9s, 10s, that's quite a lot of ways to hit, essentially. So I think that's why that's there. So if we have a look at the histogram for the second one, well, it's a bit different, isn't it? The 0, so if we have a look at how often we're scoring 0, ace queen scores 0, and so does 6 queen. They both score 0 about 40% of the time, 39.1% of the time, which is, you know, well, it's not a very good not good frequency for us. We'd really like to score some points. So we'll put all of our hopes on the play, and that's something I haven't even touched on at all, is the playing potential of these hands. I don't think I'll go over that today. That's maybe too much, because we want to also compare this to Jack 10. But the nice thing about throwing away, I guess, ace queen and 6 queen is that Yes, or ace queen in particular has a chance to get 7 points. It's not a very high chance, but it's a chance nonetheless, and that's because we've kept the 6, 7 in hand. So whenever we cut a 5, we've got the 3, 5, 6, 7, 10 to give us 7 points. Okay. Whereas when we throw away 6 queen and 7 queen, we're really forfeiting those really good cuts for us. For some reason, 7 queen has a slightly lower chance of getting 0. Why is that? Oh. 7 queen has a lower chance of scoring 0, but 6 queen has a higher chance of scoring 4. Okay. Well, that is... I didn't realize that at the time, but I guess if you think about it, it should make sense somehow. Right, because whenever you cut a 6 and you have 6, 3 in hand... Wait, is that true? Well, if you throw away 7 queen, we've got 3, 6... Ace 3, 6, 10 compared to Ace 3, 7, 10. Yeah, there are some differences, right? If you cut a 7, then you get Ace 7, 7, 15 for 4 points. Whereas if you keep Ace 3, 6, 10, then well, I thought that should be similar to if you cut a 6. There must be something I'm slightly missing here, and so maybe it's a slight miracle that both of these hands score exactly the same. Average of about 2.09. Okay. Okay, well that's interesting. But by throwing away ace queen, we sort of leave open the potential of hitting big, and that can be good sometimes. But the downside of throwing away ace queen is that you leave yourself open to scoring 0 more often. Okay. Let's have a look. Let's compare this. Take a mental snapshot of this page, and let's compare it to if our queen was a jack. Okay, so this is the last thing I want to talk about today, but I've swapped out our queen of hearts with a jack of hearts. And now let's have a look at these results. As you can see, this is completely different, right? So at the top now, our best discard is 6, 10, followed by ace 10, then 7, 10. And why is this happening? Well, what was my advice? My advice was, well, throw away your biggest middling card and biggest 10. That doesn't quite apply here because it's a good idea to hold on to jacks because jacks are just worth a little bit more. And so that's why all of the jacks appear, 6 jack appears down here, 7 jack down here, and so on. 7, 10 also appears slightly lower than 6, 10, and that's because 7, 10 is semi-connected. So it's possible for your opponent to maybe throw away an 8 and a 9 to get a longer run out of that. Whereas 6, 10, it's a lot harder. So it's one thing to throw away connected, then it becomes a lot easier. It becomes a lot better though if you throw away something that's disconnected or has at least one gap. But then if you throw away a pair of cards that has a gap of 2, then it becomes really hard for your opponent to fill that gap in inside of their crib. So in this case, the effect of throwing away cards that differ by 2 with 2 spaces in the middle is much better than throwing away 2 cards that have 3 spaces in the middle. So 3 spaces in the middle wins out, and then the jack as well. We don't throw that away because the jack is just worth points. So that's why 6, 10 is at the top. Then ace 10 as well comes along, and ace 10 is here because while it does give a slightly bigger crib, it does allow us to keep 6, 7 in hand, which gives us the most points. So depending on what we need at the time, we have the option between these 2 particular discards. We know that on average, they're really giving us the same thing, actually. These top 3 options are all pretty much the same, right? the hand minus crib score is pretty much 2.0, 2.05, say. And really what you're debating in between is, do I want a few more points in hand? In which case I should go with ace 10, or do I want to play a little safer in the crib? In which case I should go for something like 6-10 or 7-10. In this case, we might be drawn a bit more towards 6-10 because the cards are slightly more disconnected. I'm not sure if we'll see much from looking from these histograms in particular. Well, we see that the reason why ace 10 is so good is because, well, we now have chances to hit these big scores. And when you have chances to hit big scores, it really pushes up your average. On the other hand, if we have a look at the crib scores, yeah, they're all pretty similar. If we throw away ace 10, then it makes the chance of our opponent scoring 0 and 2 a lot less, because the ace gets involved in a lot of combos that make 15 very often. So we don't have that. That's why it's not particularly safe. But if we throw away 6-10, 7-10, yeah, there's some good chance for our opponent to score only 0 or 2 points in the crib. Okay, and so when we compare to the previous version, nowhere in the top do we see the possibility of throwing away both of our 10s, because the 10s are connected in this case. So if ever you see a low, middle, high hand, these are all the factors you should think about. Do I want to throw away a middle card and a high card? Do I have an ace in my low card? If I have an ace in my low card, I can throw away maybe an ace and one of my biggest 10s. I want to hold on to my jacks. And also, I want to try and keep as many points as possible. So if my cards are connected in the middle or in the high section, then it's sometimes good to keep those together. It's also especially good if you've got low cards that are connected as well. Although ace 2, it can be sort of debated whether that's really connected, because you can't hit a run on the bottom. Nothing is below an ace. All right, a lot of stuff that we went through today. I hope you enjoyed. Hope you got something out of it, and I will see you next time for another daily cribbage. Bye for now.